Hey there, this is Rob from Southgate Media Group. The following podcast was recorded during the SMG Podcast Marathon at Indy Pop Con 2018 in Indianapolis, Indiana. This podcast marathon was 10 hours long and featured 19 podcasts covering a wide variety of geek-centric topics. Before we jump into the episode, I want to thank our amazing sponsors for this SMG Podcast Marathon. Without you, it would not have been nearly as cool. Links to our sponsors can be found in the show notes and at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. First of all, thank you to Tango Comics for the exceptional event poster. Thanks to our banner sponsors, Passion Nerdly Podcasts, Tome Travelers Podcast, Kinda Nerdy News with KJ Podcast, Movie Madness Podcast, Ed Maudlin and the Maudlin Realty Group, Very Dark, Very Quick Podcast, Advanced TV Herstory Podcast, Seriously? Let's Play Podcast, Dice Voyeurs Podcast, The Masks of Nyarlathotep Podcast, The Crit Show Podcast, The Amazing LARP Chronicles of the Realm, Midnight Matinees Podcast, The Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois, Otherworld Theater in Chicago, Illinois, the This Week in Geek Podcast, live at the Blue Box Podcast, the Binge-Worthy Podcast, and SMG Microcons. A special thanks to the Bonus Hours Podcast Network for sponsoring our free charging station. There would have been a lot of dead devices without your support. And finally, thanks to the sponsors of our program, the Bonus Hours Podcast Network featuring the podcast Between the Profound and Profane, Kinda Nerdy News with KJ, The Crit Show, an actual play podcast, Very Dark, Very Quick, the podcast, PassionNerdly.com, featuring the podcasts Dice Voyeurs and Tome Travelers, the Kevin Long Show podcast, and finally, the upcoming book, Pod Life, Podcaster's Stories. And there we go, the plugs are done. Enjoy the show.
In a space too far from anything to be nothing, a blue light shines in the void. Through the shadows, shapes appear. People, stories, wonders, and mysteries. Live from Indy Pop Con, it's a special mini-episode of Tales by the Blue Light with me, your host, James Wilder. Usually these episodes feature stories written by me, as well as some skits, but we're boiling the show down to the essentials today. One story and a few bits of fun. But before we get on to our Tales of Wonder, let's check in with our first sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Not Cursed Board Games. At Not Cursed Board Games, none of our games have ever been cursed, and we resent the implication that every single person who has purchased one has met with a terrible fate over the last 7 months. Our board games provide fun for the whole family, and our owner, Chuck Carlson, guarantees that. You can try games like The Seven Diamonds, an amazing game about trying to collect secret treasures that didn't get flipped over by Chuck's brother during a play session, as that brother invoked an ancient right, damning his brother and all his works. Nope, it's just a wholesome family fun. Not Cursed Board Games, now available. All purchases must sign a liability waiver. So, to start us off, let's bring on our first segment, a brand new episode of Monster Hunter Monthly, hosted by Magpie Jones, usually from the middle of nowhere, Utah, but today, right here from Indy. Hi everyone at Indy Pop Con, I'm Magpie Jones. I've been off on a big quest to find a changeling, as you know if you've been tuning in. So I happened to be passing through Indy during PopCon, and James was kind enough to give us this little spot on the show to give you a little talk on the importance of ghost safety. Now, you might think that ghosts aren't a big problem, and that just means you have probably never read a book.
Ghosts are a common household pest, usually brought on by a dark past or a hidden family secret that tears at the very seams of your sanity or whatever. If you have a ghost in your house, common ways to tell are objects being moved around, strange electronic interference with your devices, weird sounds you can't explain, or your own death. You can get rid of ghosts through some quick and easy tricks. You'll just need a few simple items. 1, some salt. You can get this at the grocery store or just steal a bunch of packets from a restaurant. You know, the kind of salt doesn't really actually matter too much. Next, get some holy water. The best way to get holy water is to awkwardly run into a church and fill up a bottle with some from a font of it they have sitting around and then run out without talking to anyone while they all look at you funny. I've used this method for years and have only gotten arrested twice, so you'll all be safe. Finally, get a copy of Kevin Federline's album, Playing with Fire. YouTube is fine if you can't find it anywhere. Just make sure you play it without ads. So, yeah, you might have to get YouTube Red. Sorry. Use the salt to trap the ghost. It can't cross a line of salt, so slowly block the ghost off from leaving one part of the house at a time and start dabbing holy water on things to bless it so, the ghost can't touch it. Now, make sure you have a path for the ghost to exit from, a hole in the salt line. Now just get out your Kevin Federline album and play it loudly for the ghost. If all goes well, the ghost will flee from the room because most of the undead cannot stand that album. And, you just steal the salt line, bless the rest of the house so it can't come back, and now the ghost is someone else's problem and you can turn off the music. Now I know what you're all wondering. Yes, I have encountered a ghost or two that tried to tell me that K-Fed's Playing with Fire wasn't as bad as everyone tried to claim it was and proceeded to lecture me on it. If that happens, just play anything good and they'll probably leave. So always remember the main rule of ghost hunting, kids. If it's someone else's problem, you can go ahead and go to sleep. Thanks for having me, Indianapolis. Until next time, don't die. Okay, thanks for that, Magpie. This episode of Tales by the Blue Light was brought to you by rubber ducks. Have you ever wondered why everyone uses rubber ducks in the bathtub and not other ocean creatures or birds? Good. We don't want you to ask that question. We don't want you to know. Bathe with the ducks. Let them bring you joy during bath time. There is nothing odd about them. Promise. Quack. 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 Now, today we only have one story, so let's get on to it. A little sci-fi adventure set in the universe of 10,000 Dawns we're calling The Secret Keepers. Alana ran. The Secret Keepers gaining on her. It was her 11th birthday, and it was time for them to take her secrets. But she had ran instead. Her chest ached from running, but she couldn't stop. She passed one abandoned building and got onto the next, where she saw a low window leading into a basement. It would have to do. She lifted the old window and dove down, landing not too far down on a dusky desk below the panes. She scrambled off it, took a deep breath, and waited. She could hear their footsteps above her. They passed over her. She counted to 12 and let out the breath she'd been holding till her lungs ached. She waited longer, and the sounds of them searching grew distant, and then all was still. The building she'd climbed into was old. No one had lived in it since even long before the Great War. Naturally, no one had picked it clean. No one had even dared touch it. But Alana was here. So it was too late to play coy now. She pulled herself up and dusted off some ancient boxes. She'd expected something more interesting than them mostly being labeled medical storage, but life was often disappointing. She brushed the dust off and found that it wasn't just dust. It was frost. It was cold. She brushed and then scraped, and soon enough she found that the metal tube had a latch. She pulled it open and saw a big red button labeled de-thaw. She thought for a moment that it could be a bad idea. Then she decided she was already in trouble, so what difference did it make? She slammed the button in, and it suddenly got a lot less cold. Steam rose from the tomb. Air and water hissed and dripped. Ancient lights, half working, flashed in patterns, and a crack appeared halfway along the tube. Alana rushed back and jumped behind a desk. The tube popped in half, the top flying up on a hinge, and a man-shaped thing tumbled out of it onto the floor. It didn't cough. It hissed and popped too. Parts of it seemed to lurch into place as the temperature corrected. It pushed itself up, and its head tilted towards Alana. It didn't have a face, just a blank white mask with one eye on the right side. She froze and tried to get up the courage to run. It army crawled towards her on its forearms, a static hiss followed by a high-pitched whine shrieking at her. She saw a broken chair leg and grabbed for it. As the thing rose up onto its legs, it was broad and tall, wearing some sort of long brown coat, but had no skin. Instead, there was a gray-white carapace of some sort of... It didn't look quite like metal or plastic, but to her it looked like it was in between them. It towered over her, and finally it spoke as she clenched her chair leg tightly. Sorry, I'm a bit out of place here. Did the ship land safely? Also, where am I? Who are you? It's nice to meet you. And why has no one cleaned this building? She stared up at him. You can speak? He tilted his head to one side. So can you. So that means we have something in common already. He reached into a pocket of his coat and pulled out a crumpled hat, which he placed on his head, only to pull it off instantly as he bowed to her. Archimedes Artemis von Honoraribe, possibly at your service. I still do not know what's going on, but you can call me Arch. I'm hiding, she answered. Okay, so that's usually a bad sign when I meet a child who is hiding. From the Secret Keepers. That name is not inspiring confidence. They want to perform the ritual, but I'm scared. And we have a trifecta. Okay, so you haven't seen a giant spaceship, have you? I was on one. The captain thought he could cut some time by going near a tear in reality. And let me tell you, that was a bad call. I think I saved the ship, but I haven't heard about a ship. We've always been here. Arch couldn't frown, but Alana seemed to sense he wanted to. What's your name, then? Alana? Surname? Family name? She scrunched her face up. What's that mean? Just Alana, then, like Beyonce. Okay, so how about I help you with these secret keepers, and you help me find my ship and figure out why I just woke up in an abandoned building in a tube. Sound good? She nodded. Sounds good. So, Arch said, sitting down cross-legged in front of her, tell me about these secret keepers. Well, Alana replied, they keep your secrets. I gathered, but how? She shrugged. I don't know, they just do. They touch your head, and you tell them your secrets, and then they own your secrets. But I've never done it. I've seen them do it. It happens to everyone on their 11th birthday. Arch folded his arms. They own your secrets? Okay, what's that mean? She shrugged. You know, you can't question them or disobey their orders. Arch leaned in. That's pretty messed up, and it sounds like someone needs to help you out of your ritual then. Someone like me. I can't be seen with you. The Secret Keepers are very serious about no outsiders coming here. Arch held his hands up. Hey, no worries. I can be your imaginary friend. He rose and dropped the coat he was wearing to the floor with a dramatic flourish. And then, with a ripple over the carapace that he had instead of skin, he vanished. Alana took an involuntary step backward. That was not normal. Laughter came from the empty room, and a dusty jar lifted off a table, flying around through the air, accompanied by appropriate mouth noises. Arch? She said, afraid despite herself. He reappeared, his carapace shifting in stages back to its normal color, instead of mirroring whatever he was in front of. Oh, I didn't mean to frighten you. I'm here to help. She gave a faint smile. Come on, then, I'll take you to the town. She raised a hand to the tall cyborg, and he took it and vanished, the pair walking back to the town, her hand awkwardly holding his invisible one in the air. In time, they reached the gates of the town, where a sign said, "If you can read this, you can read," said the sign. Well, I suppose they have me there, Arch said. Alana pressed her thumb to the gate, and a light blinked, showing her genetic credentials had been approved. The town had people in it, but it looked like too few people for the size of the town. At the center of the town was a tower. Arch stalled, staring up at the metal structure. What is it? Alana asked. Don't look up at me and ask that. It makes it really obvious that I'm here. She turned her head down quickly. Right, sorry. Okay, do you know what that is at the center of the town? Alana nodded. That's the temple of the Secret Keepers, where we worship them, and they live. He nodded, not that she could see him nod. Well, I think I found the horse I rode in on. What's a horse? She asked. Arch replied, I've seen a horse before, but I'm not really sure what they're for. Probably because I live in the future. I think they're like prototype cars. Alana nodded. Oh, okay. Before tilting her head to the side and asking, what's a car? I think maybe we'd be better off saving the Q&A till the end here. With that, a sound blared from the tower. Alana trembled. That's it. That's the sound of calling. They'll be doing another ritual soon. We all have to go. Arch made a motion that looked like he was scratching his head. Not that he could really scratch anything through his carapace. I know that song. That's Thunderstruck by AC/DC. It's the magical tune of the Secret Keepers. Fair. How about we go see? Alana frowned. Maybe we could just run. This is dangerous. Arch squeezed her hand. Be brave. I think I know what's going on. Together, they entered the temple. On a platform, the Secret Keepers stood, robed in rich red. Their heads boxy triangular masks, their hands ropey and knotted, blue skin filled with wires and tubes. A child knelt before them, and they were each placing a hand on them. Child, your secrets are ours, and now you will give so that order may live. Actually, you know what? I think I'd like to give some secrets out. How about I have a go? The Secret Keepers turned and saw Arch appear out of thin air next to Alana. They turned to each other, and two of the Secret Keepers silently nodded. We always welcome secrets. Come, stranger. Arch winked his one eye at Alana and bounded towards the platform, hopping up to it and sliding to a halt on his knees. Cyborg, you freely give us your secrets? Sure, Arch said. Love to have an open chat. The Secret Keeper pulled its sleeve back to reveal its knotted hand, flesh interwoven with tubes and wires. It placed its hand on Arch's head and let out a shriek. All the Secret Keepers did. Thought so, Arch said, to the audience. The next few minutes were fairly uneventful. Arch and the Secret Keeper simply stood there, on the platform, in still silence. But to them, something else was happening. The Secret Keeper felt someone inside their minds, inside their secrets. He rushed through, and as though their memories were hallways filled with doors, tried to shut this stranger out one by one, but they couldn't do it fast enough. He strolled through one door, and he was on the ship he'd come in on. The cyborg is out! We threw him into cryostasis, the lieutenant said, decades ago. The captain gritted his teeth. Ugh, damn it, he was right about that tear in reality. The lieutenant's eyes bulged. He was what? He just took out half our security team trying to stop us going into that tear. The ship lurched and tumbled through thanks to the artificial gravity and the stabilizers. They didn't feel it. If this were a drama, they'd be thrown around the bridge. Instead, the monitors all showed chaos and danger while the room remained perfectly still. Now is not the time to be questioning my orders, Lieutenant. The lieutenant squinted. But your orders were wrong. If that cyborg was right, we've just been thrown into another universe. Who knows what it's going to take to survive here? I need everyone to be able to follow my orders. Is that clear? Order is what we need. The lieutenant nodded, and the ship finally came into calm black space. Where are we? Unknown, sir, the helmswoman said. None of these stars are familiar. There's a planet near us, though. Can it sustain life? Launching probe. When it came back, it could. The Secret Keepers stumbled into their own memories. Their brains were on fire. There's a lot in here, isn't there? Arch said. This isn't your place, interloper, they yelled back. He didn't answer. He just walked in another door. The colony had been at peace for so long, till the war, till they'd gotten tired of the captain's orders. Now the colony was a ruin. He didn't even know where the cyborg had ended up during the mess. He needed that pest on ice. The captain looked around at the survivors. We can't let this happen again. We need to take some sort of steps to fix this. You can't fix society, Lieutenant responded. Everyone has secrets. He looked back at them. Then we fix that, the lieutenant nodded. I think I have an idea. And from what they learned from the cyborg they had in cryo, before they'd lost it, they modified their bodies, and Arch saw them, their skin turning hard and blue over the decades, the tubes getting surgeried in. They would lead these people, and so they concocted a ruse. See, the lieutenant said, the human brain runs on electrical impulses. Arch cut in. So you ask for their secrets, and then you hack into their mind. That's what the cords in your hand are. You mess with their brains. The captain, lieutenant, and helmswoman turned to him in their memory. You're not supposed to be here. This is a memory. It's the past. Arch put a giant yellow duck-shaped couch into the room by imagining it and dropped onto it, crossing his legs. Well, I am now. You make them have to follow your orders, like putting a line of code into their brain, asking for their deepest secrets. That's just a trick to make them let their guards down, make it easier to get in and rewrite the code in their brain. Am I wrong? The secret keeper scowled. Get out! Arch laughed. You've been doing this to these people for decades, lying to them, controlling them. Do you think I'm just going to let that continue? His humor dropped out of his voice, and he rose from the couch to his full height. One chance, stop this now, reverse it, or I do something you don't want me to do. The secret keepers laughed. We control this town, they said in unison. You can't stop us, Arch sighed. You based this on me, on my part electronic brain. And you don't realize you let me in here. Their eyes widened. Secrets are no fun unless you talk to me. He had seen their secrets, and he gave them new orders. Leave this town and never come back or speak to the people here again. And they shuddered. The crowd saw the secret keeper shudder, and they came too. Arch rose. The secret keepers tried to argue, tried to fight the order in their heads, but they were already walking towards the exit as they lambasted Arch for doing a bad job. Alana ran up to him. You did it, Arch! I'm not actually sure what you did, but they're gone. I turned their own powers against them. Pretty simple in the end. How? Well, you know what they say. Secrets are no fun. Secrets hurt someone. I've never heard that, she replied. Fair. So you folks are descendants of the folks on the spaceship, but I think I can still get you all back to Earth if you want to. Alana frowned. This spaceship? Arch threw his arms wide. This tower. It's the spaceship. It's not space-worthy, but, I think I can fix that. That is, if you want me to. We could see the stars? Arch nodded. Any of them you want to see. Alana marveled. Then fix it. But who are you anyway, really? He winked. I still have to keep some secrets. Let's go then, Alana. There's all sorts of wonders in the universe, and you're going to see them all. We'll start with a horse. Thank you. So that's all for today from The Blue Light. This show was written and performed by me, James Wilder. Our producers were Rob Southgate and Chris Mao. My beloved girlfriend is Rebecca Jacob. Hi, Rebecca. If you like this show, find me on Patreon at James Wilder and look for our podcast. We're going to launch us soon. Till next time, keep your blue light shining. There's plenty more to see.
For updates about upcoming SMG podcast marathons, follow us on Twitter at SMG Pods, on Facebook at Southgate Media Group, or go to our website and sign up for our email list at southgatemediagroup.com. Thanks again for listening.